Hey guys, I'm Franny, and I'm just your average high schooler trying to survive the daily drama of teenage life. I was having a completely normal morning until I started rummaging through my room, tossing pillows and blankets everywhere because I couldn't find my favorite t-shirt. It wasn't in the closet, and it wasn't under the bed either. I started to panic because that wasn't just any ordinary piece of clothing. It was my most prized possession in the whole world, featuring the actual autograph of my idol, Kendall Jenner. As I was frantically searching, I heard my grandma standing right outside my closed bedroom door. She called out to me in her gentle, shaky voice, telling me that my shirt had been dirty, so she had kindly washed it for me and wanted me to come take a look. My heart completely stopped. I rushed over, yanked the door open, and saw my precious shirt neatly folded right on top of a pile of fresh laundry. I snatched it up to check the front, and I wanted to cry because the autograph was completely gone. The wash cycle had erased my idol's signature entirely. I couldn't help myself but to scream at the top of my lungs. My grandmother had just moved in with my family after my granddad passed away. At first, I thought having her around would be amazing because all my childhood memories with her were so happy. But after losing my prized autograph, I totally take that back. She has become a walking disaster in our house. What makes it worse is that she is getting up there in age, but she still insists on trying to learn how to use social media. My mom even went out and bought her a brand new iPhone 16. Meanwhile, I, her own flesh and blood, was stuck using this ancient iPhone 8. When she asked me for help, I looked up at her with pure annoyance. But I forced a fake smile and reluctantly started showing her how to use it. With how forgetful she is bound to lose all her passwords anyway. So I decided it would be smartest to just log into her new device using my own iCloud account. After all, when she inevitably gives up on it, this nice phone will end up becoming mine anyway. As soon as I entered my login details, all my photos automatically synced to her screen. We both ended up staring at a picture of Joss that popped up. My grandma smiled and commented on how handsome the young man was. I got super excited and told her she was completely right, because Joss's attractiveness is truly second to none, and he is basically every single girl's dream guy. My grandma just giggled and asked if he was my dream guy too. My mood immediately dropped, and I told her sadly that I didn't stand a chance with him because he is famously cold and has absolutely zero interest in any of the girls at our school. That conversation was probably the one and only time my grandma and I actually agreed on something. Otherwise, we are constantly bickering about everything, especially my clothes. She didn't even bother asking me before she took her sewing kit and completely patched up all the cool rips in my favorite distressed jeans. Then, she left this old-fashioned dress she had sewn herself right on my bed with a little note saying that the adorable outfit would suit me much better. I mean, I used to love her handmade dresses when I was 5 years old, but who on earth wears stuff like that to high school these days? It made me so irritated, and that's still not everything. She constantly nags me about using a hair straightener, telling me I should just leave my hair naturally frizzy, because she thinks it looks much cuter that way. I just rolled my eyes because she didn't realize that I actually inherited this thick, wild hair directly from her. She had no idea that my natural hair was the exact reason I had to grow up listening to mean comments from my classmates. They used to tell me that I was actually pretty, but that it was a total shame about my messy hair. Or they would ask why I didn't have smooth hair like my parents and if I was adopted. Those hurtful words made me hate my natural curls with a passion, and I always wished for smooth, straight hair just like Kendall Jenner. So, of course, I'm going to keep straightening it every single day, no matter how much my grandma complains about. Thankfully, I kept telling myself that all of her non-stop complaints would finally come to an end tomorrow, because summer break is officially over and I'm finally going back to school. I was so incredibly ready for a break from the sharp ring of the school bell echoed through the hallway, signaling that summer break was officially over. I walked into my classroom and noticed a crowd of my friends huddled together whispering excitedly. I wondered what everyone could possibly be gossiping about so early in the morning. Right then, our teacher walked in and announced that a very special student was joining us today. The door swung open and my jaw nearly dropped to the floor. It was my grandma. I stared in absolute disbelief, wondering if she had somehow gotten completely lost on her way to her weekly bingo game. As break time arrived, a wave of pure humiliation washed over me. I figured if I stayed deadly still and hid behind my textbook, she wouldn't spot me. But my luck ran out as she walked right up and set a bottle of orange juice on my desk. She smiled warmly and told me loudly that I had forgotten my juice, then called me her sweetie pie. I felt every single pair of eyes in the room lock onto me, and I just wanted to disappear from the planet right then and there. After the second class, I sneaked out as fast as possible to avoid having lunch with her. As I stood in the crowded cafeteria line, my best friend Lloyd kept teasing me, doing silly gestures behind my back to make me laugh. Suddenly, a loud laugh erupted across the room. I turned and saw my grandma sitting at a table. Lloyd nudged my shoulder, joking that Joss had a peculiar taste in women since he ignored every girl at school but seemed smitten by my granny. Fearing she was bothering him and making him uncomfortable, I marched over, forced an apologetic smile to Joss, and quickly pulled my grandma away. When school finally ended, my mom came to pick us up in her car. My grandma sat happily in the front passenger seat, chatting away with Mom without a care in the world, while I slumped in the back seat, boiling with anger and crossing my arms in tight silence. On the whole ride home, my grandma kept recounting her first day just like an excited little kid would. She turned around and asked me if I knew that they had vending machines in the hallway filled with all kinds of snacks. She called that a genius idea. Then she laughed and mentioned how huge the campus was, admitting she had almost wet herself while searching for the restroom. I just rolled my eyes in the back seat, wondering which part of that story was supposed to be funny. To me, it only proved that someone her age belonged in a nursing home, definitely not a high school. The moment we got home, I knew I needed to have a private talk with my mom. As soon as she was finally alone in the kitchen washing some dishes, I walked in and immediately demanded to know how exactly my grandma had ended up in my actual classroom. My mom turned around and explained that when my parents had first invited Grandma to live with us after Granddad passed away, she had set a condition, saying she would only move in if she could go back to school. My mom smiled and told me that she thought it was a lovely idea because it meant Grandma wouldn't be lonely at home all day since I would be there to keep her company. She also reminded me that Grandma had spent her entire life taking care of our family, so it was finally our turn to look after. Hearing that, I suppose my mom raised some valid points, and my anger softened a bit. But I seriously had no idea that my grandma could turn my high school life completely upside down like this. Over the next few days, she clung to me all day long, ate whatever I ate for lunch, listened to the same pop music I listened to, and even started hanging out with my friend. Worse still, she completely ruined my reputation by telling my friends all of my most embarrassing childhood stories. She giggled and told them how I used to eat entire tubes of toothpaste just because the commercials said it was edible, and how I had once tried to incubate regular kitchen eggs myself, just to see if I could hatch a little baby. I could only cover my face in shame, wishing she would just stop talking. Later that week, I was standing up on a wooden ladder in the club room, trying to paint a high section of the wall. I was wearing a tight bucket hat pulled low to cover my naturally frizzy hair. But dealing with my bad hair day wasn't even the worst part of my week. My grandma had actually broken my hair straightener, leaving me completely stuck wearing this stupid hat just to hide my head. It was so incredibly annoying. As I was painting, Lloyd came running into the room from outside, screaming at the top of his lungs about some absolute breaking news. I just mumbled under my breath, completely annoyed, and asked him what the big deal was this time. Lloyd looked up at me excitedly and announced that Joss had finally found the girl of his dream, and that she actually went to our school. I was so startled by the news that I quickly spun around on the ladder, accidentally knocking over a large bottle of turquoise color right onto Lloyd. I gasped, questioning how that was even possible since absolutely no girls had ever caught Joss's eye before. Lloyd let out a loud groan, wiping the wet paint from his face, and yelled at me to look at what on earth I had just done. I looked down and realized I had accidentally turned him into a real-life version of Sully from Monsters, Inc. Since his entire head and body were now covered in thick turquoise paint, I tried my best not to laugh out loud, quickly apologizing and admitting it was totally my fault. A bit later, I was sitting on a bench out in the quiet school garden, still sporting my frizzy hair under my hat. I was staring at a screenshot of this mysterious girl's Tinder profile that Lloyd had sent me. According to him, this was the secret girl Joss had been chatting with before she suddenly vanished into thin air. The profile said her name was Moore, she was 17 years old, and she supposedly went to our school. But as I stared at the interface, I noticed she only had one picture uploaded, and it didn't even show her face. All I could actually see in the photo was a head of thick, frizzy brown hair. As I was trying to figure it out, a hand suddenly reached down out of nowhere and snatched the bucket hat right off my head, exposing my messy hair to the open air. I immediately thought it was Lloyd trying to get back at me for the paint incident, so I turned around ready to grumble at him. Instead, I found my grandma standing there with my hat in her hand. She smiled gently and asked me why I was covering up such beautiful hair, adding that the handmade dress she had left on my bed would go far better with my natural look. That was the absolute last straw for me. I decided right then that there was no way I was letting anyone see me looking like a total joke with this hideous hair and an old-fashioned granny outfit. I snatched the hat right back out of her grip, feeling a sudden rush of anger. I begged her to just leave me alone and stop causing me so much much trouble, yelling that this was my school and that having her around all the time was completely embarrassing me. The second those words left my mouth, my grandma froze completely. She looked deeply shocked and hurt, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something to defend herself, but she just turned around and walked away in sad silence. By the time I was standing at my locker a week later, my hair was perfectly straight again. I glanced across the hallway and saw my grandma chatting happily with a group of new friends. Since it had been a whole week since our argument, it seemed I was no longer her concern. I tried to convince myself this was a good thing for both of us. Suddenly, a deep voice behind me asked if we could talk. My eyes lit up because I recognized Joss immediately. I turned around to find him standing there, smiling gently while shyly scratching his head. My mind went wild thinking this was the first time he had ever approached a girl, and I felt like the luckiest person alive, wondering if he had finally noticed my charm. But then he hesitantly pulled out his phone, showed me the mysterious girl's Tinder profile, and explained that he had seen my natural curly hair the other day. He thought I looked like the girl in the picture and wanted to know if I was her. My heart completely sank. I forced a tight smile and told him sadly that I was sorry, but I wasn't more. I could see the instant disappointment on his face. He apologized for the mistake, but before leaving, he smiled and told me that, by the way, I looked really pretty with that curly hair. I stood there frozen in surprise, unable to believe that anyone besides my granny actually liked the frizzy hair I always tried to hide. A few days later, I walked into the main hall and ran into a shocking scene. Joss was walking down the hallway, holding hands with Amy. It turned out she had stepped forward as the mysterious girl, and everything lined up. She was 17, had curly brown hair, and her last name was Moore. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what on earth Joss actually saw in such a notoriously wild girl. Her new friend group, which now embarrassingly included my own granny, was always pulling dumb, loud stunts just to get attention. My grandma looked completely ridiculous, dressing in such bright, mismatched colors that she looked no different from a human traffic light whenever she hung out with them. Once, their rowdy group even went as far as turning the quiet school library into a fashion runway, while everyone else was trying to study in peace. My grandma was confidently strutting and doing a catwalk right on top of the long study tables while her friends stood below, laughing and cheering her on. Obviously, the noise quickly reached the school supervisor, but since my grandma was the oldest, she was also the only one slow enough to actually get caught. Thanks to that little stunt, she earned herself a direct ticket to the principal's office, and the school immediately called my mom to come in and handle it. That evening, we were all sitting in the living room, and I just couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore. I openly asked my mom if she didn't find it completely ridiculous that a person my grandma's age was still getting scolded by a high school principal, arguing that school was definitely not the right place for her at all. My grandma just chuckled and chimed in, telling me that performing art required a bold personality. She claimed that she might be old on the outside, but her spirit remained incredibly youthful, and then she excitedly announced that she was going to participate in the school's annual Rise to Fame contest because she thought she might just win the whole thing. I immediately turned to my mother with begging eyes, hoping she would talk some sense into her, but all I received in return was a forced smile as she gently told me to just let Grandma do whatever she wanted. I rolled my eyes, clicked my tongue, and mumbled under my breath that she was going to lose anyway, so I didn't see why she was even bothering. My grandma just laughed out loud at my attitude and challenged me to sign up too so we could see who would actually win. I figured fine, challenge accepted. I knew I could defeat her easily, so I told myself she should just wait and see. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. It was a big deal at school, and each team of 3 had to participate in different rounds, with only the top 2 teams making it to the grand final. The first round took place on the indoor field, and we had to play handball, where you try to throw the ball into the opponent's goal. It was an absolute piece of cake for us, because I had 2 total sporty types on my team, Lloyd, and another athletic friend, who basically carried us through. As for my granny's team, which consisted of herself, Joss, and that dolly Amy, they completely fumbled and were eliminated almost immediately, which made me feel pretty smug. Right after the sports round, we moved to the main stage for the Sudoku challenge. Each team had to race to solve a puzzle, and the quickest one would win. I figured this would be a total breeze for me, considering I used to spend long afternoons playing this exact game with my granny when I was a little kid. Meanwhile, Amy was busy whining to the organizers, loudly complaining that this round was an absolute joke because Sudoku was so outdated. Honestly, the more she talked, the more obvious it became that she was just terrible with numbers and basic math. I smiled to myself, thinking it would be as easy as taking candy from a baby. But I completely forgot that my granny was sitting on their team, and it turned out that Joss was also incredibly quick-witted. It took them almost no time at all to crack that difficult puzzle. Watching them jump up, hug each other, and celebrate on stage completely pissed me off. Losing to them by a mere single second was a real stinger. I tried to clear my head, telling myself to focus, because we absolutely had to beat them in the upcoming countries and history round if we wanted to win the whole competition. With just a few minutes left before that final round, I was about to step out of the backstage waiting room when a soft chime sound came from an old phone sitting on a nearby chair. I walked over and realized it was my grandma's phone. Looking down at the glowing screen, I was shocked to see a bunch of notifications popping up from Tinder. I stood there confused, wondering how on earth she even knew how to use that app. My curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it up and my jaw dropped. The screen was filled with messages between Joss and that mysterious girl named Moore. My mind was completely racing, wondering why Grandma had this account in the first place, and why Joss was suddenly so convinced that Amy wasn't actually the girl he was looking for. Right on the screen, there was a recent message from Joss telling the mystery girl that he knew she wasn't Amy, asking who she really was, and begging her to let him know. I immediately ran off to find my grandma and spotted her hiding out in a quiet corner of the stage wing. But as I hurried up to her, she quickly grabbed my hand, pulled me close, and put a finger to her lips, signaling me to stay quiet. We stood there together, secretly eavesdropping on a conversation from Amy and her group of friends just around the corner. One of Amy's friends laughed out loud, admitting she thought Amy had only let that annoying old hag join the team as a total joke, but confessed that she was actually being super helpful, and they were going to win easily. Amy just snickered and agreed, mentioning she had heard that history was the old woman's main strength. Then she coldly added that she only needed her to finish this one last round, and then she planned to kick her out of the group in a heart. The whole circle burst into nasty laughter. I nervously glanced over at my granny, but she didn't show any sign of being angry at all. So what do you think my grandma did next? The very second the final round officially began, she marched right up to the front of the stage, grabbed the main microphone, and announced to the entire room that she was officially withdrawing from the competition, because she would never let two-faced people take advantage of her. With that, she turned on her heel and walked right off the stage. The whole audience erupted into a massive fuss, whispering and buzzing, while Amy's face turned completely pale with shock. But the real kicker was when Joss stepped up to the microphone next. He looked right at Amy and announced that he was quitting too, because he refused to be on a team with a liar. Then he walked away, leaving a panicked Amy to chase after him. The crowd went completely wild with gossip, and the organizers had no choice but to announce that since the other team had forfeited, our team had automatically won the grand prize. I rushed straight home right after the awards ceremony and found my grandma sitting alone, lost in thought in the garden. I sat down next to her and placed my hand on her shoulder to console her. She looked at me, smiled gently, and shared a part of her life I had never heard before. I was stunned to learn that she had gotten pregnant at 16 and had to drop out of school. Her classmates hadn't been kind to her, so she never finished her education. Now that she finally had free time, she wanted to experience the youth she had missed out on. She gently stroked my hair, telling me never to let mean words get to me, and to cherish who I am because there will always be people who love that side of me. Her words were incredibly touching, reminding me of Joss's compliment about my curl. Curious, I asked her about the Tinder account. Grandma smiled and admitted that because she knew I liked Joss, she had created the profile to learn more about him and help me. The picture was actually her when she was young, which explained the resemblance, and Moore was her maiden name. Tears welled up and I hugged her tightly, profusely apologizing for my awful behavior. She patted my head and promised to take me to a secret spot the next day. The next afternoon, I completely embraced my natural look, leaving my hair frizzy and putting on the dress Granny had sewn for me. It wasn't trendy, but it fit perfectly and made me feel strangely confident. We happily walked into a cozy book cafe, and my heart skipped a beat when I spotted Joss. My grandma walked up to him and announced that she had brought the person he was looking for. Joss and I both looked at her, completely confused. Grandma laughed, explaining that the alias Moore she used on Tinder was entirely based on my own hobbies, habits, and taste in music. She had been collecting my details to text him, giggling that she just had to let him know an interesting girl like her Franny existed. That was why Joss hadn't felt compatible with Amy. And the Sudoku round had proved it, since he and the mystery girl shared the exact same passion for the game. In the end, everything was cleared up. Grandma is still attending my school, and I don't mind it at all anymore. She brings homemade cakes for my friends, tells us great stories, and gives the best advice. Most importantly, she made me realize that being myself isn't so bad, frizzy hair and all. Oh, I almost forgot. You're wondering what happened between me and Joss, right? Well, I think you should just see for yourself. Right now, he is sitting right next to me, and we are happily solving a Sudoku puzzle together with huge smiles on our faces.